First contact. The vast expanse of space had long been the domain of the Zathar Confederacy. For millennia, their sleek biomechanical ships had patrolled the star lanes, secure in the knowledge that they were the undisputed masters of their corner of the galaxy. It was on a routine border patrol that everything changed. Captain Krillax stood on the command deck of the Zathar warship Nebulous Claw, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic displays that surrounded him. His leathery skin glistened under the soft blue light of the ship's interior, tentacles twitching with anticipation. Something felt off. "Report," he barked, his translator converting the clicks and whistles of his native tongue into the standard galactic language. "Nothing unusual, Captain," replied his second-in-command, Vexala. "Wait, there's a small anomaly at the edge of our sensor range." Krillax's upper eyes narrowed. "Magnify." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a distant point of light that seemed to shimmer and distort the space around it. As they watched, the point expanded rapidly, coalescing into a sleek, metallic shape unlike anything they had ever seen. "By the void," Vexilla whispered. "What is that?" The alien ship was a marvel of engineering, all smooth curves and gleaming surfaces. It lacked the organic aesthetics of Zathar vessels, instead exuding an air of precise, purposeful design. As it drew closer, they could make out strange markings on its hull, symbols in an unknown language. "Hail them," Krillax ordered, his voice betraying a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Moments passed in tense silence. Then, to everyone's shock, a response came through. Not in the standard galactic language, but in perfect Zathari. "Greetings, vessels of the Zathar Confederacy. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Ship Horizon. We come in peace and seek diplomatic contact." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the command deck. How could these unknowns speak their language? And what was this Earth they spoke of? Krillax composed himself quickly. "Unidentified vessel, you are in violation of Zathar space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." There was a pause before the response came. "I'm afraid we can't comply with that request, Captain. We are on a mission of peaceful exploration and have no hostile intentions. Perhaps we could arrange a neutral meeting point to discuss." "Enough," Krillax interrupted. "You will comply or face the consequences. This is your final warning." The tension on the bridge was palpable. Krillax's tentacles writhed with agitation as he awaited a response. When it came, the human's voice was calm but firm. "We understand your position, Captain, but we cannot allow ourselves to be boarded. We respectfully request that you allow us to depart your territory. We have no wish for conflict." Krillax's patience snapped. "Weapons, target their propulsion systems. Disable that ship." The nebulous claw surged forward, its organic weaponry pulsing with deadly energy. To everyone's surprise, the human vessel made no attempt to evade. Instead, it simply vanished. "What in the name of?" Krillax began, but his words were cut short as alarms blared throughout the ship. "Captain," Vexilla cried. They're inside our shields. Boarding parties detected in multiple sectors. Impossible. No technology should have been able to penetrate their defenses so easily. And yet, as Krillax watched in stunned disbelief, the internal sensors showed multiple humanoid figures materializing throughout the ship. "Security teams to all decks," he roared. "Capture the intruders at all costs." The next few minutes were chaos. Reports flooded in from all over the ship. The aliens moved with incredible speed and precision, disabling Zathar crew members with strange weapons that emitted pulses of energy, leaving them unconscious but unharmed. Krillax was about to order a ship-wide lockdown when the command deck doors hissed open. In strode a bipedal creature, smaller than a Zathar, but radiating an aura of authority. Its skin was a pale pink, with dark fur atop its head. 2 eyes regarded him coolly. "Captain Krillax, I presume." The creature, clearly the human captain, said in flawless Zathari, "I believe we need to talk." With a gesture, the humans' companions lowered their weapons. Krellax found himself face to face with a species he had never encountered, one that had effortlessly outmaneuvered his finest warship. "Who? What are you?" he managed to ask. The human's mouth curved upward in what he would later learn was called a smile. "We are humanity, Captain, and we have a lot to discuss about the future of this galaxy." As Krellax looked into those alien eyes, he felt a chill run down his spine. In that moment, he knew that everything was about to change. The age of Zathar dominance was over. A new power had arrived on the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same again. The interrogation begins. The holding cell hummed with an eerie blue light, casting strange shadows across the featureless walls. In the center of the room, secured to a chair by energy restraints, sat the human female who had identified herself as Captain Sarah Chen. Despite her captivity, she appeared remarkably calm, her dark eyes scanning the room with quiet intensity. Across from her, Interrogator Zixrel paced back and forth, his chitinous exoskeleton clicking softly with each step. The Zathar security officer had dealt with countless prisoners over his long career, but never one quite like this. The ease with which the humans had boarded their ship still rankled, and the High Command was demanding answers. "Let's start with the basics," Zixrel said, his translator conveying his words in the human's language. "How did you bypass our shields?" Sarah's lips curved into a slight smile. "I'm afraid I can't divulge classified information about our technology. You understand, I'm sure." Zixrel's mandibles clicked in frustration. "You are in no position to withhold information, human. Your ship has been impounded. Your crew is in custody. Cooperation is in your best interest." "Is it?" Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like we're having a polite conversation. I don't see any signs of coercion or threats." The Zathar interrogator felt a twinge of unease. The human was right. Their standard intimidation tactics seemed woefully inadequate in this situation. He decided to change tack. "Tell me about Earth, your homeworld. How many of you are there?" Sarah leaned back in her chair, as much as the restraints would allow. "Earth is a beautiful planet. Blue oceans, green forests, soaring mountains. As for our population, let's just say we're not short on manpower." Zixrel's upper eyes narrowed. "You speak our language fluently. How is this possible?" "We're quick learners," Sarah replied with a shrug, "and we've had plenty of time to study you." The implication sent a shiver through Zixrel's carapace. Had the humans been watching them? For how long? He pushed the unsettling thought aside and pressed on. "Your technology is advanced, far beyond anything we've encountered. How long have your people been spacefaring?" Sarah's expression turned thoughtful. "In cosmic terms, we're practically newborns, but we've always been driven to explore, to push boundaries. Once we set our minds to reaching the stars, well, let's just say we made up for lost time." Zixrel found himself fascinated despite his best efforts to maintain professional detachment. The human's words painted a picture of a species that had achieved in decades what had taken the Zathar millennia. "And what are your intentions towards the Zathar Confederacy?" he asked, dreading the answer. "Peaceful coexistence," Sarah said firmly. "We have no desire for conquest or subjugation. We seek to learn, to trade, to form alliances. But make no mistake, we will defend ourselves if threatened." The quiet confidence in her voice was unnerving. Zixrel decided to push harder. "You speak of peace, yet you violated our territory and assaulted our ship. How do you explain this contradiction?" Sarah's eyes hardened slightly. "We attempted peaceful communication. You responded with threats and aggression. Our actions were purely defensive, designed to minimize harm while ensuring our own safety. Notice that none of your crew suffered lasting injuries." Zixrel had to concede the point. The humans' incapacitating weapons had left no permanent damage, a level of restraint that was, quite frankly, alien to Zathar military doctrine. "Let's move on to your ship," he said, trying to regain control of the interrogation. Its capabilities are impressive. How does your propulsion system work? Sarah smiled again, but this time there was a hint of mischief in her eyes. Well, you see, it's all based on the quantum entanglement of tachyonic particles in a state of superposition, modulated by a hyperdimensional flux capacitor. Zixral's head spun as the human launched into a detailed technical explanation that sounded simultaneously plausible and complete nonsense. He held up a hand to stop her. Enough. Are you mocking me, human? Not at all, Sarah replied innocently. I'm simply answering your question to the best of my ability. It's not my fault if the concepts are a bit advanced for your current understanding. The Zathar interrogator felt his professional composure slipping. This human was running circles around him, revealing nothing of value while subtly undermining his authority. He needed to reassert control. Perhaps we should move to more persuasive methods of questioning, he said, allowing a threatening edge to creep into his voice. To his surprise, Sarah actually laughed. I wouldn't recommend that, interrogator. For one, it would violate several interstellar conventions on the treatment of prisoners. More importantly, she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It would be terribly embarrassing for you when it doesn't work. Zixral found himself taking an involuntary step back. The human's confidence was unshakable, and for the first time, he felt a tendril of fear coil in his thorax. What kind of beings were these humans to face captivity with such poise and defiance? Just then, the cell's communication panel chimed. Interrogator Zixral, report to the command deck immediately, came the urgent voice of Captain Krelax. This isn't over, human, Zixral said, trying to muster some semblance of authority. Sarah nodded politely. Of course not. I look forward to continuing our chat. Oh, and interrogator, you might want to have your engineers take a look at your ship's primary power couplings. They sounded a bit off when we came aboard. Zixral stared at her in disbelief before hurrying out of the cell. As the door hissed shut behind him, he could have sworn he heard the human humming a jaunty tune. Making his way to the command deck, the Zathar interrogator's mind raced. He had failed to extract any useful information, and worse, he couldn't shake the feeling that the human had been the one in control the entire time. As the lift doors opened onto a scene of barely controlled chaos, Zixral realized that their encounter with humanity was only just beginning, and that the Zathar might be woefully unprepared for what was to come. Tables turned. The command deck of the nebulous Claw was a hive of frantic activity. Captain Krelax's tentacles writhed in agitation as he barked orders to his increasingly panicked crew. Interrogator Zixral stepped out of the lift, his compound eyes widening at the scene before him. Report. Krelax snapped as soon as he spotted Zixral. The interrogator straightened his posture. The human prisoner remains uncooperative, Captain. She reveals nothing of value and seems immune to our standard interrogation techniques. Krelax's upper eyes narrowed. That is the least of our concerns now. Our systems are malfunctioning shipwide. Weapons, propulsion, even life support. Everything is behaving erratically. As if to emphasize his point, the lights on the command deck flickered ominously. A chill ran through Zixral's exoskeleton as he recalled the human captain's parting words about the power couplings. Sir, he began hesitantly. The human mentioned something about our primary power couplings. She seemed to imply that they had done something to our systems. Krelax finished, his voice a low hiss. Yes, we've come to the same conclusion. But how? And when? Before Zixral could respond, a junior officer called out in alarm. Captain, we're detecting massive energy buildups in the human vessel. They're powering up. All eyes turned to the main view screen, where the sleek form of the Earth ship Horizon hung in space. As they watched, points of brilliant light began to flare along its hull. Impossible, Krelax whispered. We have them completely locked down in our docking bay. There's no way they could be. His words were cut short as the horizon simply flickered out of existence, reappearing moments later several thousand kilometers away. "All weapons. Target that ship," Krelax roared. But even as the order left his mouth, chaos erupted across the command deck. Consoles sparked and sputtered, holographic displays dissolved into static, and the ever-present hum of the ship's systems faltered. "Captain," the weapons officer called out, panic evident in his voice. "Our targeting systems are offline. We can't get a lock." Krelax whirled to face Zixrel. "Get back down there and get answers from that human. Use whatever means necessary." Zixrel hurried back to the lift, his mind racing. As the doors closed, he heard Krelax ordering all security teams to converge on the detention level. Something told him they were already too late. The lift deposited him on the detention level, and immediately Zixrel knew something was wrong. The corridors were eerily silent, devoid of the usual patrols. As he approached the human cell, he found the guard slumped unconscious outside the open door. Heart pounding, Zixrel peered into the cell. The energy restraints flickered weakly, securing nothing but empty air. Captain Sarachin was gone. A soft chuckle behind him made Zixrel spin around. There, leaning casually against the corridor wall, stood the human captain. She looked completely at ease, as if this were nothing more than a social call. "Looking for me?" Sarah asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. Sarah shook her head. "Temporarily inconvenienced you. All systems will return to normal in a few hours, with some notable upgrades. Consider it a goodwill gesture." She took a step closer, and despite himself, Zixrel found himself backing away from this small, soft-looking creature that had single-handedly brought low the pride of the Zathar fleet. "Now," Sarah said, her voice taking on a tone of command that Zixrel couldn't help but respond to, "let's go have a chat with your captain. I think it's time the Zathar Confederacy learned a bit more about their new neighbors." As if in a daze, Zixrel found himself leading the way back to the lift. His mind was awhirl with questions, but one thing was becoming increasingly clear. The galaxy as he knew it would never be the same again. The lift ride to the command deck was surreal. Sarah stood calmly beside him, still holding his weapon, but making no threatening moves. Instead, she filled the silence with casual observations about Zathar ship design and speculation about potential improvements. When the doors opened, they were met with a scene of controlled chaos. Captain Krelax stood at the center, barking orders that seemed to have little effect on the malfunctioning systems around him. He turned at the sound of the lift, his four eyes widening in shock at the sight of Sarah. "Captain Krelax," Sarah said pleasantly, stepping forward. "I believe we got off on the wrong tentacle earlier. Perhaps we could start over." Krelax's tentacles writhed in a mixture of fury and fear. "Security teams, seize the human," he shouted. But no one moved. The Zathar crew members looked uncertainly between their captain and the small alien who had so thoroughly outmaneuvered them. Sarah's voice took on a hint of steel. "That won't be necessary, Captain. Your ship is currently under our control. But I assure you, we mean you no harm. We're here to talk." She gestured, and suddenly every display on the command deck came to life, showing images that made the Zathar crew gasp in wonder and disbelief. Sprawling cities that dwarfed anything in the Confederacy, massive fleets of ships that made the nebulous claw look like a toy, and strangest of all, glimpses of dozens of alien species working and living alongside humans. "This is who we are," Sarah said, her voice filled with pride. "Humanity and its allies. We've come a long way to meet you, and we have much to offer. But first, we need to establish some ground rules." Krelax stared at the displays, his earlier bravado evaporating. What do you want from us?" Sarah smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in it. "To be friends, Captain. To exchange knowledge, to trade, to explore the stars together. But also to make it clear that aggression against us or our allies will not be tolerated." She turned, addressing the entire command deck. "The galaxy is vast, and full of wonders beyond imagining. But it can also be dangerous. We believe that together, we can face those dangers and unlock those wonders. What do you say? A hush fell over the command deck. Zixrel found himself holding his breath, aware that he was witnessing a pivotal moment in his people's history. Slowly, hesitantly, Captain Krelax extended a tentacle. Perhaps we should continue this discussion more formally. As equals. Sarah's smile widened as she reached out to grasp the offered tentacle. I couldn't agree more, Captain. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. As the human and Zathar leaders began to talk in earnest, Zixrel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in his life, he felt a glimmer of excitement at the possibilities it held. The stars, it seemed, were no longer the limit. Diplomatic breakthrough. The Grand Council chamber of the Zathar Confederacy buzzed with an energy unlike anything in recent memory. Representatives from every major clan and colony world had gathered, their exoskeletons gleaming under the bioluminescent lights. At the center of it all stood Captain Sarah Chen, her small form dwarfed by the towering aliens around her, yet commanding attention with her mere presence. High Counselor Vex Mose, the eldest and most respected of the Zathar leaders, raised his arms for silence. The chamber gradually quieted, all eyes turning to the dais. Esteemed colleagues, Vex Mose began, his voice amplified by the chamber's organic acoustics. We stand at a crossroads. For millennia, we have believed ourselves to be the pinnacle of galactic civilization. Recent events have challenged this assumption. A murmur rippled through the assembled aliens. Many shifted uncomfortably, recalling the reports of how a single human ship had effortlessly neutralized their most advanced warship. Vex Mose continued, Captain Chen of Earth has requested this audience to formally introduce her people and discuss the possibility of diplomatic relations. Captain, you have the floor. Sarah stepped forward, her posture relaxed yet dignified. Thank you, High Counselor. Esteemed members of the Zathar Confederacy, I come before you not as a conqueror or a threat, but as a hand extended in friendship. She activated a holographic projector, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images of Earth and its colonies, sprawling cities, lush forests, vast oceans, and technology that made even the most advanced Zathar inventions seem primitive by comparison. Humanity is young compared to your ancient civilization, Sarah explained, but we are driven by an insatiable curiosity, a desire to understand and explore the universe around us. This drive has led us to develop rapidly, to push the boundaries of what's possible. The images shifted, showing humans working alongside a diverse array of alien species. But more importantly, it has led us to seek out new civilizations, to forge alliances and friendships across the stars. We believe that diversity is strength, that the exchange of ideas and cultures benefits all. A Zathar representative near the front raised a tentacle. And yet you came to us with a show of force, disabling our ship and infiltrating our systems. How can we trust your peaceful intentions? Sarah nodded, acknowledging the point. A fair question. Our initial approach was cautious, born from past experiences with species that reacted violently to first contact. When peaceful overtures were met with aggression, we felt it necessary to demonstrate our capabilities clearly and decisively, while minimizing harm. She paused, looking around the chamber. But consider this. With the power we demonstrated, we could have easily destroyed your ship or taken control of your worlds. Instead, we stand here, offering friendship and cooperation. The chamber erupted in discussion, chittering and clicking filling the air as the Zathar debated among themselves. Sarah waited patiently, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the agitation around her. Finally, High Counselor Vex Mose raised his arms again for silence. You speak of cooperation, Captain Chen. What exactly are you proposing? Sarah's face lit up with enthusiasm. An exchange, High Counselor, of knowledge, of culture, of technology. We have much to learn from your long history in biological engineering prowess. In return, we offer advancements in physics, medicine, and exploration techniques that could revolutionize your society." She gestured, and new images filled the chamber. Zathar and humans working side by side in laboratories, exploring new worlds together, engaging in cultural exchanges. But more than that, Sarah continued, her voice filled with passion, "we offer a new perspective on the galaxy. The Zathar Confederacy has been isolated for too long, seeing other species as potential threats or subjects for study. We invite you to join a larger community of spacefaring races to take your place in a galactic civilization built on mutual respect and cooperation." The chamber was silent for a long moment as the Zathar processed this radical proposal. Then, from the back of the room, a voice called out, "And if we refuse?" Sarah's expression turned serious. "Then we respect your decision. We would establish clear boundaries to avoid future misunderstandings and maintain a policy of non-interference. But know this, the galaxy is changing. New species are reaching for the stars every day. Isolation is no longer a viable long-term strategy." High Counselor Vex Mose leaned forward, his compound eyes studying Sarah intently. "You've given us much to consider, Captain, but I have one more question. Why us? With your level of technology, you could have bypassed our territory entirely. Why make this effort?" Sarah smiled warmly. "Because every species, every civilization has something unique to offer. Your biological technology, your complex social structures, your ancient wisdom. These are treasures that enrich the galactic community. We believe that together, we can achieve things neither of us could alone." She spread her arms wide, encompassing the entire chamber. "Imagine Zathar bioengineering combined with human quantum mechanics. Envision your philosophical traditions informing new approaches to interstellar governance. Picture Zathar and human explorers charting the unknown reaches of the cosmos side by side." A ripple of excitement passed through the assembled aliens. For the first time, many of them were looking at the human not with fear or suspicion, but with curiosity and even a hint of hope. High Counselor Vex Mose's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "You paint a compelling picture, Captain Chen. We will need time to deliberate on your proposal. But I believe I speak for many here when I say that you have given us a glimpse of a future we never imagined possible." Sarah bowed slightly. "Thank you, High Counselor. We await your decision with optimism. Whatever you choose, know that humanity extends its hand in friendship." As Sarah stepped back, the chamber erupted in animated discussion. The Zathar representatives huddled in groups, gesticulating excitedly as they debated the implications of this unprecedented offer. In a quiet corner, Interrogator Zixrel watched the proceedings with a mixture of awe and trepidation. He caught Sarah's eye, and she gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. In that moment, Zixrel realized that he had been present at the dawn of a new era. Whatever the Council decided, the Zathar Confederacy, and indeed, the entire galaxy, would never be the same again. As the deliberations continued late into the night, a palpable sense of anticipation filled the air. The stars outside the council chamber seemed to shine a little brighter, as if heralding the promise of a new age of exploration and cooperation. The future, it seemed, was limited only by the combined imagination of humanity and its new potential allies. A new era dawns. 5 years had passed since the fateful day when humanity first made contact with the Zathar Confederacy. The joint human-Zathar space station, Harmony, hung in orbit around a neutral world, its unique design a testament to the collaboration between the two species. Part sleek human engineering, part organic Zathar architecture, it stood as a symbol of the incredible progress made in a relatively short time. Inside one of the station's expansive observation decks, Captain Sarah Chen stood beside High Counselor Vex Mose, both gazing out at the star-filled vista before them. Sarah had aged slightly, a few strands of gray now streaking her dark hair, while Vex Mose's exoskeleton had taken on the pearlescent sheen of a Zathar elder. "I still find it hard to believe sometimes," Vexmo said, his translator conveying a tone of wonder. 5 years ago, we were on the brink of interstellar war. Now look at what we've accomplished together. Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting the starlight. It's been an incredible journey, hasn't it? But this is just the beginning. A holographic display sprang to life between them, showing various images from across the newly formed Human-Zathar Alliance. Zathar scientists working alongside human engineers to develop new forms of sustainable energy. Human doctors collaborating with Zathar biologists to cure diseases once thought incurable. Joint exploration teams charting unknown regions of space, making discoveries that pushed the boundaries of both species' understanding of the universe. The exchange program has been particularly successful, Vexmos noted, gesturing to an image of young Zathar students attending classes on Earth. I never imagined I'd see the day when our youth would eagerly volunteer to live among aliens. Sarah chuckled. You should see the waiting list of human students hoping to study on Zathar worlds. The cultural exchange has been enriching for both our peoples. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. A young Zathar officer approached, bowing respectfully. Apologies for the interruption, High Counselor, Captain, but we've just received word from the Galactic Council. They're ready to begin the ceremony. Sarah and Vexmos shared a look of excitement tinged with nervousness. This was the moment they had been working towards for years. Well, Sarah said, straightening her uniform, shall we make history, old friend? Vexmos's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had come to recognize as a Zathar smile. Lead the way, Captain. They made their way to the station's Grand Assembly Hall, a vast chamber designed to accommodate beings of various sizes and environmental needs. As they entered, they were greeted by a sight that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. Representatives from over 100 spacefaring civilizations filled the room. Some were familiar allies of humanity, others were long-standing trade partners of the Zathar, and many were new faces, drawn by the promise of this unprecedented gathering. At the center of the hall stood a simple pedestal, upon which rested an ornate document and a peculiar device that hummed with barely contained energy. As Sarah and Vexmos took their places, a hush fell over the assembled delegates. A tall, ethereal being that seemed to shimmer with inner light stepped forward. The current chairperson of the Galactic Council. Esteemed representatives, the chairperson began, their melodious voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. We are gathered here today to witness a momentous occasion. The Human-Zathar Alliance, through their remarkable journey from adversaries to partners, has demonstrated the power of cooperation and mutual understanding. The chairperson gestured to the document on the pedestal. This charter, drafted with input from all member species, will establish the framework for a new era of galactic cooperation, a united federation of worlds dedicated to peaceful exploration, scientific advancement, and the preservation of the diverse cultures that make our galaxy so rich. Sarah and Vexmos stepped forward together. As they approached the pedestal, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this point. From that tense first encounter aboard the nebulous Claw to the challenging negotiations and the hard work of building trust, every step had led to this moment. Captain Sarah Chen of Earth, High Counselor Vexmos of the Zathar Confederacy, the chairperson intoned, as the representatives of the alliance that inspired this charter, you have the honor of being the first signatories. Do you accept the responsibilities and commit to upholding the principles laid out in this document? Sarah's voice rang out clear and strong. On behalf of humanity and all our allies, I do. Vexmos's response came in perfect harmony. In the name of the Zathar Confederacy and all who sail the stars, I do. Together, they placed their hands and tentacles on the strange device. It hummed louder, and suddenly a burst of energy shot upwards, coalescing into a dazzling holographic display visible to everyone in the hall, and via faster-than-light communications to billions of beings across the galaxy. The chairperson's voice swelled with emotion. Then, by the power vested in me by the Galactic Council, I declare the United Federation of Worlds to be officially founded. May this mark the beginning of a new age of peace, discovery, and solidarity among all sapient beings." The hall erupted in a cacophony of cheers, applause, and various species-specific expressions of joy. Sarah felt a lump in her throat as she looked out at the sea of diverse faces, all united in this historic moment. Vex Mullis leaned in close, his voice barely audible above the celebration. "You know, Captain, when you first boarded our ship all those years ago, I thought it was the worst day of my life. I've never been so happy to be proven wrong." Sarah laughed, blinking back tears of joy. "The worst day of your life so far, Vex Mullis. Something tells me we're in for plenty more adventures." As the celebration continued around them, Sarah's gaze drifted back to the star-filled window. Out there, countless worlds and wonders awaited discovery. But more importantly, billions of beings were looking up at those same stars with a new sense of hope and unity. The galaxy had faced its share of challenges and would undoubtedly face more in the future. But Sarah knew that together, united in their diversity, they could overcome anything. The age of isolation and fear was over. A new era of exploration, cooperation, and limitless possibility had dawned. And it had all started with a simple misunderstanding, an attempted interrogation, and the unshakable human spirit that turned adversity into opportunity. As Sarah Chen looked out at the fruits of that fateful encounter, she couldn't help but smile. The best was yet to come.